Okay, I think I'm about to start.
Eh?
About to start.
You're about to start. You don't give me your phone. Are you press 9?
Yeah, this is a funny. All right, folks, welcome to today's stream. This is militano.com, and I am your host, Tony. Militano.com is a channel that discusses wars and international relations and the toys used in them in between. Now, yesterday, we started uh, a stream. Yesterday was our first stream, and today, like I promised yesterday, we are following up. Uh, uh, we will be doing something on the Ukrainian war, the road so far. This war started last year, to be precise, February 24th. The Russian army rode their tanks into a sovereign nation in Ukraine. And today, a war that we thought would last, a couple of days, given the superpower status of Russia, has lasted a whole year. And then the Russian army has found the Ukrainian army a very resilient setup. And they are telling us, they are telling the world that we are not fighting Ukraine, but we are fighting the whole NATO setup. But well, like Nigerians will say, story for the gods. If you are a superpower, you do what superpowers do. You are a superpower, you get all your allies right, and then you carry everybody that needed to be carried along. And that is what we expected. But then we'll be doing a whole lot of excerpts on Russia as a superpower, but that is not why we are here. Today, like I promised, we'll be doing something on the road so far, the war so far, a timeline. We actually designed them into 4 different parts, for the course of this. For the course of this, you can see on the screen now. This is the first. Our first point, when Russia rode their tanks across into Ukraine through 4 different angles, attacking Ukraine, invading Ukraine. They came in through 4 different angles. From the northeast in Russia towards Kharkiv, they came in from that point, raising 300,000 foot soldiers and armies into Ukraine. And then also from the east, through Donetsk, they came in also through Donetsk, and then they also came in through the People's Republic of Luhansk, and then through the People's Republics of through the south in Crimea. Through the south, they came in through Crimea, they came in through Luhansk, they came in through Donetsk, and then they came in from Russia towards Kharkiv. And it was a 4-pronged attack that they used in entering Ukraine. And it was supposed to be a shock and awe, a sort of a blitzkrieg attack, in such a way that the Ukrainians will not be able to get their act together, and then it would have been a walkover for the Russians. Now we want to quickly do something on how many tanks did the Russians have or rode into Ukraine at the first point of the attack. Now they used 3,000 operational tanks, 3,000 operational tanks, and those were, most of them were very, very modern. They brought in the T-80Us, the BVST, and the BVS. They brought in the T-72 B3s and the T-90MS into Ukraine, and it was 3,000 operational tanks at a time into a small nation like Ukraine. And then they overwhelmed the whole intention was to overwhelm this small nation, who basically we discussed yesterday how close these 2 nations are. They are neighbors, they are brothers, they have shared heritage, they have very close family ties. It's like you are talking about the South Koreans and the North Koreans. They have the same ancestry. The Russians, the Ukrainians, and the Belarusians, they are all together like that in one corner of their country. And we did say they came in with 300,000 troops. They came in with 370 MiG, and that is the jets they brought in. They came with the 350 SUG-27, 350 SU-27, and mind you that a large size of that SU-27 has been destroyed by the Ukrainian army, and a large size of the MiG-29s has also been destroyed. And both sides, we are not saying one side now, both sides have had huge losses. Now, on the side of Russia, which we are trying to do a prelude to this discussion, and wherever you are listening to us and hearing us from all over the world, please subscribe to this channel and then share our video. Please join in this conversation, because the more we talk about this conversation, the more we are able to build a world that is habitable for all of us. You know, we need to talk about it. We need to discuss this. Whether you are in Europe, you are in Asia, you are in Africa like I am, you are in the Americas, South or North, you are in the Antarctica, please join in this conversation, and then gradually you'll be surprised. Those who are in charge of world politics may just be listening to us, and then this video may ensure that they take the right steps to ensure that they stem the tide of this war. This war is one of the most major wars in Europe since the Second World War. And I dare say it is a failure on the part of the United Nations. Because in the first place, it was because of the wars that the League of Nations could not contain or stop that led to the creation of the United Nations. So now that wars are beginning to come again in Europe, there have been major wars in Africa, there have been major wars in Asia, but now it is coming to Europe again. And so I think the United Nations should step up and should do something about this. Now, let us not deviate from what we've been discussing. Now, the cost of this war on the part of Russia has been $82 billion. My God, my God, my God. $82 billion on the side of Russia alone. Now, it may shock you to know that the World Bank in August last year, September last year, 2022, did say that the cost of rebuilding Ukraine will amount to $349 billion. $349 billion. That is what it will cost to rebuild Ukraine. And that was as at September of 2022. Now that war has dragged, even as I talk to you now. Guns are blazing in Ukraine. Tanks are blazing in Ukraine. In fact, it has become, now this war with Ukraine is a case study of modern warfare. I think it should be a case study of why humans should not fight again, because we are seeing a war that is being fought with drones, a war that is being fought with cyber attacks, you know, a war that is being fought, you know, I mean, with what I'm trying to say is a war where you and I don't have to sit in one place and do macho. Someone is in a tank that is so comfortable and cozy, and with a tight air conditioner, and it's just like he or she is playing a computer game, and the result of that computer game is destruction in the enemy country. So you find that this is a warning to other nations that gone are the days where we can write roughshod over nations, that because, oh, this nation is small, I can roll into it and get whatever I want. God are the days. Russia is learning the very hard way. And his economy, our economy is being stretched, you know, to the limits. So, what had been the timeline? The first initial invasion of Ukraine by Russia was from the 24th of February 2022, when Ukraine launched a military invasion into Ukraine. Now, Ukraine is a sovereign nation. I want us to mark that. Do not forget that Ukraine is a sovereign nation. Ukraine is an independent nation with our constitution, our presidency, who's actually the president is Volodymyr Zelensky, who was once a comedian. I like the way that sounds, and he's doing a marvelous job with what's going on in Ukraine. And then Russia is a neighboring country with our own president, the ever indefatigable Vladimir Putin, and then they rode their tanks, 3,000 tanks, 300 personnel into that nation with the intent to totally ride a roughshod over the country and then achieve their intentions over a sovereign nation. And on the 7th of April 2022, fighting actually started. Now, I said the fighting focused away from northeast and Kiev and towards the south and east of Ukraine. This covers a period from 8 April 2022, when they actually started this fight. Now, it has not been easy for an average, ordinary Ukrainian since that day, since that point in time. It has not been easy for Ukrainians whose lives have been turned. Most of those who fought in the Second World War, they are either old or they are gone. And this generation, basically, we don't know what it takes to fight a war. We don't know what it really is to fight a war. And then, since the main essence of man on earth is to make the world a better place, I believe this generation has done a marvelous job of that. But whether you're in Europe, you're in America, you are in Asia, you are in Africa, we've done a marvelous job of making this earth a wonderful place. We've carved out the earth, we've built the earth, we've built bridges, we've even gone beyond the earth itself. We've gone to Mars, and we are doing a marvelous job. Now, to then drag us 10 paces backward with war. You see the equipment on the screen. These equipments are not just fuel powered or electricity powered equipments. These are deadly war tools, deadly war toys that can send death to people 1,000, 2,000 miles off from where you are. So the first initial invasion was on the 7th of April, when they attacked Ukraine for 4 different angles. The first was from the north in Belarus towards Kiev, when they entered in through that area, and from the other one, the northeast in Russia towards Kharkiv, and the third one from the east in the Donetsk People's Republic, and the Luhansk, and then the fourth was from the Luhansk People's Republic, and from the south they entered through Crimea, and then they entered, like I said before, with 300,000 personnel, and they had with them 3,000 tanks, and these tanks are very modern tanks. The T-80 and the BVS, the T-72B3s and the T-90MS. These are very modern tanks in the Russian repertoire, military repertoire. They attacked, and they had with them 370 MiG-29 and 350 Su-27 jet fighters that they brought. And I told you that so far in this war that has lasted more than 1 year, Russia on their own, from their own side, as at September of 2022, has expended $82 billion for whatever reasons. We did enumerate some reasons why Russia need Ukraine at all costs yesterday. You can do well to go over those videos again. You will find out why Russia really need to bring Ukraine back to the Euro-Asian fold. Then we enumerated things like the economy, the superpower posture of Russia, the fact that Ukraine is very important to the well-being of the Russian hegemony in that region, and that is why. So they've spent $82 billion, and as at September of last year, the World Bank estimated that it will take the world $379 billion to rebuild Ukraine. And that money could have gone to the homeless, to the destitute, to those who are hungry, starving in Africa. But now it's being spent to fund, to rebuild a nation that basically is independent, was doing very well. In fact, it was a very marvelous country before Russia carried and rode their tank into the country. Now, the phase 2 of this war started from shifted to the south and east of Ukraine in August 2022, the day before Ukraine announced the start of its Kherson counter-offensive. Now, you understand that when Russia actually initially entered Ukraine, they took possession of a whole lot of space. They took Kherson and a couple of other towns. But then the phase 2 of this was when the Ukrainians said, no, we have rich history in military offensive also, and then they started doing counter-attack, and then this marks the phase 2 of this war with Russia. And they started pushing back and then pushing back, and it was actually a surprise. Let's not forget that a whole lot of countries have been sympathetic to the Ukrainian cause. Countries like the United States of America, who basically leads the NATO, and also don't forget that joining the NATO has been one of the biggest reasons given by Vladimir Putin for attacking Ukraine. That the Ukraine wants to join NATO, and he does not want NATO at the back of his house. So, his justification for fighting Ukraine, for rolling his tanks and his jets into Ukraine, is that fighting Ukraine will mean dragging the borders with countries like America. But he may not have mentioned America, but he said dragging his borders with countries that want to destroy Russia. So, we know that this is one of the big reasons why he rolled his tanks into Ukraine. Okay, and we will be going to the second reason why Russia rolled their tanks into Ukraine, and the time period that this happened also this covers the period between 29th of August 2022, when Ukraine's Kherson counteroffensive started. Like I said, the first initial invasion was when Russia entered, which was from the 7th of 24th of February, and then it was like a jolly ride to them, taking one land to another, taking one town to another, pushing Ukrainian armies further down, and most of them basically were locked at a point. We were locked within Kiev, and then during the 7th of April and the 8th of April, they've gotten support from other nations, NATO nations like Germany, nations like America, France, and they brought in their equipment, and they supported them. Then they started the push. This is the second point of this war. The third point is Uhuru. The first Uhuru recorded by the Ukrainian army. Victory is sweet. Lombardi, it was Lombardi who said there is nothing in this life that the greatest achievement is when you are fought a war and you lay down on the battlefield victorious. And so you see the affections to between the Ukrainians, the soldiers, and everybody happy. It was the first victory for Ukrainians, taking back Kherson. And I wrote here, it said this covers the period between 29th of August 2022, when Ukraine's Kherson counteroffensive started, to 11th November 2022, when Ukraine troops retook Kherson. In between, Ukraine launched a successful counteroffensive in Kherson and Oblast. Starting in October, Russia started a campaign of massive strikes against Ukrainian infrastructure. Now, you see, they tell you in writing that bonds disgraces word. So, Ukraine was being pushed to the wall around, say, February, when the offensive actually initially started by Russia. And then they got support from friendly countries, brother countries, countries who were very sympathetic to their plight. Oh, this is a small nation being oppressed by Russia, so they contributed and brought and supported them with a whole lot of military equipment, thanks to countries like the United States of America, France, Germany, and a whole lot of European nations, nations in Central Europe. They really tried, and then they brought equipment and trained some Ukrainian soldiers on how to use these equipment. I remember that a whole lot of HIMARS were donated to the Ukrainians by the Americans, and then the counteroffensive started effectively between the 8th and the 11th of between the 8th of August. Between 29th of August, I beg your pardon, and then it was victory by November 11th, and they've taken back Kherson. But then, when two elephants fight, it is the ground that suffers. Russia is not just there, it's not just a member of the United Nations Security Council for play or for a joke. This is the second largest defense industry owner in the world. They have the third largest defense industries in the world, second largest arms sellers in the world. They have the largest nuclear arsenal in the world, second only to America. Second world power, military talking in the world. And then they had no option, and then they started bombing and bringing down critical infrastructure in Ukraine. That is, after the taking back of Kherson Oblast from them, they started blasting critical infrastructure in. You can see this is some of the pictures on the screen are the Dead Sea fleets of the Black Sea fleets of Russia being brought down and destroyed by Ukrainian soldiers. And in fact, that was one of the biggest surprises of this war. And then it led to Russia actually scrambling. And then at the end of the day, they were able to get themselves back. But then they started, after Kherson, they started destroying critical infrastructures of Ukraine. And that then brings us to the fourth point of this war. The fourth point of this war has been very, very critical in this war. It's been a sore battle in this war. Now on the screen is Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, and some top brass in the Ukrainian army are trying to brainstorm. Now this is the Russia Amanda. You see it on the screen. This is an Amanda, 3,000 tanks being rolled into a small nation. 300,000 with other 200,000 reserve, mobilized after the fall of Kherson. after the retaking of Kherson, then it was now a full-scale war in Ukraine. I wrote to say that this period, which is the fourth period, covers a period between 12th November 2022, after both Ukraine counteroffensive ended, to the present day. Starting in October, Russia started a massive strike against Ukrainian infrastructure, which continued into the next phase. Russia gained some advances with the capture of Soledar on 16 January 2023. Now,